Morning, Jan.
Good morning, Tom.
Thanks for joining me today and giving me a few minutes of your precious time. I know it's hard to break away, but I appreciate you sharing your expertise with the business owners out there. So, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're doing and how long you've been doing it?
Sure. My name's Yon Sugiharto. I am the Director of Learning and Development for Yale Medicine. Yale Medicine is one of the largest multi-specialty physician practices in the state of Connecticut. We are based out of the Yale School of Medicine. And what we do is we teach physicians, clinical staff, administrative staff on topics from new employee orientation to safety to compliance and regulatory topics.
Awesome. How long you been doing this?
So I've been doing healthcare training for well over 10 years now, and I've worked for Yale Medicine about just over 3.5 years. So by Yale standards, I'm still fairly new.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that. So let me ask you, who is your target audience? I mean, is it just within you, or who are you specifically, working with?
So my core audience is our 8,000 clinicians based out of Yale School of Medicine. And that includes physicians. We have also over 700 administrative staff, managers, and staff that run the clinics in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. We also train some of the staff from our affiliates, so Yale New Haven Health and also Northeast Medical Group.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So I know everybody's going through these big challenges today. What's been the greatest impact of the COVID-19 on your business and your clients' business?
The biggest impact was at the end of May, all of Yale University's operations were asked to work from home. And that was vastly different from our affiliates like at Yale New Haven Health and other organizations that work with us, where a lot of them still had their clinical operations running and some of the administrative staff could still continue on site. Yale University, in order to keep its students safe, asked everyone to work from home. The biggest impact was from a learning and development perspective. My team was about 3/4 of the way through a mandatory training curriculum. So we were about 70% complete. And about 95% of our classes were in person, live, in class. And so in a matter of 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, we were confronted with the challenge of how to convert almost all of our trainings to live virtual sessions. And I had to retrain staff on how to do that. We had to do some research on how to do that. We had to look at how can we use Zoom to do this live virtual? So the biggest impact was how to convert our training in that way. The other piece of it was, of course, our learners. At Yale University, much of the training, much of the learning that goes on is also in person. So our learners aren't really as tech savvy as we want them to be. So they had to learn how to use Zoom to raise their hand or to use a chat feature. So that was the biggest impact from a learning and development perspective in one way. The other way is that from our clinical perspective, our physicians, our nurses, of course, they weren't asked to go home. They had to care for a growing surge of patients, but they still had training to do. How could you train people who were working almost twice, sometimes triple the amount of hours that they were asked to work, and they were exhausted? So balancing how to get the information out to a growing, exhausted population was a challenge. And in many ways, my team and myself, we absorbed a lot of that energy, and it became exhausting all the way around.
Wow. Yeah. Needed subliminal training, huh? So they just
Yeah,
had.
exactly.
Yeah.
Training through osmosis is what
Yeah.
we did.
I never thought of that. It's funny. That's why I'm glad to have you on here from the healthcare side. Any kind of actions that you really specifically took that worked or maybe didn't work?
Yeah, we did a few things. So one of the first things was we quickly researched best practice ways to use the Zoom application. When we're confronted with a crisis, it's not time to cogitate and think about ideal ways of doing things. The best thing to do is react and provide. And look, the first 2, 5, 6 times are not going to be perfect. But what's important is from a learner population and from the people you're serving, your students, you're giving them something, and you could always follow up with them offline. So that was the biggest thing we learned is when you need to act quickly during a crisis, act, don't aim for perfection, deliver something, and then you could do service recovery later on.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I think some people get frozen in trying to be perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can see that in the school teachers now, because they've been trying to, all of a sudden, they've been doing it for 30 years, and now they have to learn technology.
Right. And I used to be a former history teacher, and like many teachers, teachers are perfectionists, and
Yeah,
it's easy to get frozen by aiming for perfection. And I think
yeah,
and nobody's going to know what the expectation of your class is except for you. So however you deliver it, as long as you meet your subject matter, people are only going to see and expect what you deliver to them.
yeah. No, yeah, it's right on. I mean, I see that all the time with clients that are control freaks, and I have to. That's like a monthly session, is the difference between perfection and excellence.
Yep.
To get that through, because they just tie themselves up in perfection, and it's costing them money. So actually, I have 2 clients I'm going through that with now. It's a hard habit to break.
Yes.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for small businesses, concerning the healthcare themselves and their employees?
That's a great question. So, advice that I have for small business owners and entrepreneurs, I'm going to answer that question as a healthcare leader and also from a learning and development perspective. As a manager, as a small business owner, the number one thing we should prioritize is the safety of our staff. Um, and so continue to be consistent with reminding your staff to wear masks, to use antibacterial gels, to practice all of those safety standards. If you see any types of those good habits slip, have the appropriate conversations. And of course, you can do it lightly based on the person and the context, because everyone's going through a stressful time. But it's so important that we maintain consistency, not only for the safety of that person, but people are watching you as a leader upholding those standards. So they want to ensure that they're trusting their leader to maintain everyone else's safety. The other thing, is I want to answer as a learning and development leader, and that is consider what training your staff needs, maybe what your clients need. So in terms of your staff, do your staff need training on what are the protocols to come back to work? If there are processes that are going to be handled differently because of safety procedures, or maybe the supply chain has changed, so there's going to be a delay, train them on that. Consider having more frequent huddles with your team so they're aware of ongoing changes, because in a time of crisis, even post-COVID, things are changing so quickly that your staff don't feel like, oh my God, it's another meeting. Oh my God, it's another meeting. They're actually probably thankful that you're giving them maybe a 10-minute huddle, a 5-minute huddle. Keep giving them information. From a client perspective, maybe the services have changed. Things that usually would get delivered in 24 hours are now going to take a week long. Or maybe you used to work with your client rep, Jill, but now it's going to be Andre. So give them that heads up and why, so that way their expectation of the service they're going to get is clear, it's transparent, and that way there's an understanding, because everyone knows that changes are going on right now. I think what people expect most is the transparency.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And then, I just read today, phase 3 is opening up, whatever that means. I haven't read. I haven't read it. So it went from 50% to 75%, I guess, indoor dining. So I'm not sure
Nice.
the math on that, and I'm not sure how that runs down. I didn't read it, so but you're right. Just keeping in constant communication is critical.
Yeah, that's good. And I would also say, just also from a healthcare learning and development person is, as a leader, small business owner, consider what additional things you can do to maintain work-life balance. I know there's a lot of great yoga studios, yoga teachers, for example, who will do on-site meditation for your company, or have other types of things just to kind of help people manage their own kind of balance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a perfect time for that. Try stuff you've never tried before.
Right.
I think it's really good. So, okay. My big question that I keep asking everybody, and it's not how much you can bench press, but it's what's inspiring you today that you could share with business owners? What has you inspired?
I love that question, Tom, because I will say what inspires me most is every leader and every manager of people around me in the US who are still standing today. The fact that all of you out there have been able to manage your staff, keep your organization afloat during a crisis, during a pandemic, is a huge undertaking. And Tom, I'm finding that a lot of great managers, a lot of great business owners may be too hard on themselves and think that they're not doing enough. And I'm a huge believer in coaching, like what your company provides. And one of my coaches said to me a few weeks ago is, Yon, you have done a lot. You may not feel like you've, accomplished a lot because you've had to cancel some classes, but you've had to lead a team of staff through a crisis and a pandemic. Mm. That takes a lot of energy because you're keeping them engaged. You're keeping them safe. You're constantly keeping them in touch with what's going on within the organization and the economy. And you're also helping them balance family life, working from home, and all of their other changing priorities. Maybe they have a family member who was just diagnosed with COVID, and you've got to figure out backfill. So what inspires me the most, Tom, is every great manager out there today who's still standing, because all of you have done so much. And to me, it's inspirational because it wants me to continue doing more and lead more and continue the great work we do.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think it's spot on for everybody. That's really great. So, Jan, I really thank you for your time today. If someone wants to get some questions about, how to handle the healthcare for their employees, or how would they get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me, I'm happy to have them email me. They can email me at yon.sugiharto@yale.edu. I know you're going to have this on your LinkedIn site, so I'm happy to provide my contact information there. And I'm so happy to be on here today with you, Tom, as a colleague and a friend. And I'm happy to help anyone who has any questions.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jan. Thank you so much for your time today. That was great. I can't wait to push this out and get everybody's feedback. So thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon.
Thanks, Tom. Have a good one.
You too.